Okay, hello. Welcome everybody. Welcome to the second installment of the Game Artist Show. Excuse me while I sort out my wires. Um, Welcome. Thank you for everybody for coming. I guess let's just ramp up. Just had my head looking at spaceships and all that goodness, but we don't need to talk about that yet. So, for those of you who don't know me, I'm Paul Jones. I'm an art director. I work for Cloud Imperium Games. You might know them because they're building a game called Star Citizen, a crowdfunded game, which we've raised something like over $450 million in 9 years. Insane amount. Crazy super fans. So without that, we couldn't have built the game to what it is. But that is my day job. I'm looking at spaceships, space weapons, ship components, vehicles, and I'm part of an art director team. And so we all work together to build the Star Citizen universe. At the moment, I'm working with a very tight-knit team of concept artists, so we're highly focused at the moment. And we spend anywhere between 3 months and 9 months to build some of these ships because they're absolutely massive, some of them. But I haven't always worked on spaceships, even though I do have a history of sci-fi. And so, give you a quick rundown of some of the hits. So I have worked at Epic Games for close to 7 years as a lead artist, working on Unreal Championship 2, Unreal Tournament 3, undisclosed projects. Then I've worked with Rocksteady Studios for Batman Arkham City. Then I worked on Lego. So I worked on Lego Undercover City. Is that correct? It's all merging into one. Anyway, massive open world game. Loved it. But sci-fi was calling again, so I hopped back onto Star Citizen. And just to give you an idea of the kind of work that I do, just so that you know that I'm not just chatting rubbish, let me just click on this, see if it works with the power of technology. So we've got some people coming in there. Dakota, Sitco, hi there. And so basically this is my ArtStation page, and you can get to it from, if you look up pauldavidjones.artstation.com. And this is sort of a curated example of my portfolio. And so it's a real mix. So you can see that it's quite hard actually, just looking at the two screens. I can figure this. So there's a real mix of sort of Star Citizen stuff. So I work on a lot of sort of key art and promotional stuff. So often working with concept artists and taking their models and helping sell the vision basically of that product, whether it be what we're seeing here is a futuristic motorcycle or crazy cargo spaceships. So this was built by Mike Oberschneider, one of our concept artists that we work with. But unfortunately, he didn't have time to do all the promo. And so that was my good fortune. I basically got to take his model and create some pretty cool scenes, basically. So these are all done in these models are built in 3D Studio Max. Then we take them into a program called KeyShot, and then take them into Photoshop and give it all the love basically that it needs. And just layer in all those effects, fix any problems because there are always problems, right? And so there's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of cool stuff. A lot of very challenging things to take care of. A lot of working out of problems basically. So that's kind of what I do. I mean, we can go way back now. This is obviously, we're looking at low polygon stuff and textures where they were all built by hand. So yeah, there's quite a bit of time spent in the world of games, and I think it's around about 27 years now. So definitely a good amount of experience. Started from the bottom and worked my way up to the top. And as you can see here at the bottom of the screen, there's a picture of my book. So I've spent about 4 years on and off, quite a lot of time on writing my first book, but basically this is a nuts and bolts for people trying to get into the industry, for people who are already in the industry and sort of want to know what the next steps are on that ladder, and basically everything is packed in there. So it goes from prospective applicant, portfolio work, junior artist, mid-level, senior, principal, lead artist, all the way to art director, explaining what's expected, why you don't get to see as much of your art director as you'd like, because what are they so busy on? What is your lead artist meant to be doing? How do you progress to being a principal artist? What's expected? And also the pitfalls. There's I've in working through my career, I've made a lot of mistakes. I've made a lot of good decisions, obviously, because I've got to the art director position. For some, it's not always the final position. Some people don't want to have to deal with management. I kind of like it. I like hiring people. And so, yeah, basically this is hopefully a sort of a book of almost not a cheat sheet. Let's call it a walkthrough. It's basically a guide to take you from start to finish. At least this is the world according to Paul, right? So this is based on my experience. I'll caveat it by saying I don't know everything, and there will be other people that have got different experiences, for better or for worse. And basically there's room for everybody, and it's not a one size fits all. There are always, you have to be, when you're working in video games, you have to be agile. So before I forget, so you can see at the bottom of the screen here it says to enter for a free book type giveaway, and we're going to be doing that at the end of this session. And basically I'll run it through a system and it will randomly pick a name, and then we'll be, oh, look at this, thank you green screen. I'm pretty sure I fixed that and it's gone wrong again. Anyway, that is my book. It's not special edition, it's not see-through, it actually has a blue cover. We'll send you a paperback version, signed of course, and the winner will basically get a signed copy. And so I'll remind you guys as we continue. So just give me a second to just do some tech stuff and make sure that Nightbot is working. Yes, it is. Okay, cool. All right, so enough of me babbling on about me and my book. Let's take some questions, because this is the second part of Ask Me Anything, and it literally is whatever you. I'll try and catch your questions as they pop up at the side. If I miss it, don't take offense. I just missed it. My brain isn't that fast. And if you want, you can always just type it again and it will pop up. So okay, so let's take the first question. The Drake 84. Is it ever too late to start trying to get into the gaming industry? Oof, that's a big question to start off with. Is it ever too late? I mean, ideally, no. I mean, but ultimately it depends on many factors, right? It depends on, it's often financial. If you're a sort of, let's say you're 40 and you want to get into games, you might have a family, mortgage, dog, car, all that sort of stuff, and it's can you afford to work on a sort of relatively low entry level salary? And are you prepared, to start essentially at the bottom, and sort of work your way up, dealing with all those sort of things of taking direction, figuring out from your mistakes, being agile. I mean, if you've got the mindset, yeah, that's great. You could totally do it. I mean, I think like if I was to sort of ask myself about that, I think I'd probably want to be financially independent, and then sort of, slowly sort of figure out games, get a copy of Blender, get a copy of Unreal Engines, just start teaching myself on the side, and then sort of, slowly transition in. I think you'd have to be quite cautious and probably fairly sort of methodical about how you sort of try and position yourself and try and get into the industry. But it's not undoable. Everything's doable, right? It's just how much effort and risk do you want to put into this? I hope that answers your question. That's quite a tough question. All right. Hal, or can't even pronounce Hala Olamana. When trying to get your first job in the industry, how do you compete with people who have more experience? Are you just using your portfolio to muscle your way in, or are there places where companies seek out new artists? So if you're trying to get your first job in the industry, I mean, there are always I mean, in my experience anyway, there's always going to be loads of entry level positions because it's kind of like a feeding system. You need the fresh talent because you're eager. You're just like, yeah, I'll do anything. Just give me a job. And there's that enthusiasm and sort of, and that sort of helps bolster the group. Obviously, there's a financial thing. Juniors are cheaper to hire, at a very simple level, but there's an enjoyment of training those people up. But it really does come down to your portfolio, the quality of your portfolio initially. It's all about that, right? Because that's going to land, say, on my desk. And I've said this before, within about 10 seconds, I'll be able to look at your portfolio and tell you if you're going to make the grade. And you might just sort of squeak it, that sort of point where I'm like, I don't know. And I might have to do a little more digging just to sort of look at some of your background work, and I might look at you, if you've got a Twitter or Instagram, and I might just sort of do a little bit of reading around the edges, as they say, just to sort of see kind of things that interest you and maybe how you've progressed. So yeah, it really does come down to your portfolio. That is your calling card initially. And then, once you're past that first stage, and art directors or lead artists, whoever's doing the hiring, they know what they're looking for a junior. So expectations are lower, right? So they're looking for a certain quality of work, good presentation, clarity of thought. And it also depends on the project, right? Because some of I would say, and I don't want to diss anybody. Obviously, you've got AAA titles, which are, highly complex, and a lot of people want to work on those. So competition is high, but also the quality bar is really high for you to reach. So you've really got to do something quality, and it might not have to be original. It just has to be high quality. It could be the best looking space crates you've ever made, and the art director or lead artist will be like, oh, that's cool, I see it, yeah, I like it, it's well executed, good UVs, nice shading network, presented well. If it's got I don't know, let's say some really good looking latches or some opening mechanism, and it's like a 2 or 3 stage animation, and you're like, oh, okay, this person's got the extra mile. They've actually, they've done some thinking. They've really started. You can see that they're pushing, and that's what you're looking for that sort of high end project. And then obviously you've got projects which are simpler to make. I'm not saying they're easy, but the art style might be simpler, relatively faster to make, and therefore possibly, and it could be, anybody who's got experience, feel free to chime in. It could be that it's easier to get, but ultimately it's still going to be, you're going to be against other people who are applying for a job. and you want to do everything you can to be the best. So portfolio first. Create cover letter. I mean, it's almost a formality in my mind. And then obviously CV or resume, and then it comes down to you get an interview, and then it's a personality test. Ultimately, we're looking for red flags. We're looking to make sure that you're able to take feedback, that you're not resistant. It's relatively easy to sort of pick up on that. It's what I call a red flag. And if that's waving in the interview, you listen to it because it's waving for a reason. And sometimes the red flags, you're like, and you might address it in the interview. You might sort of pick up on it. You might sort of ask some sort of indirect questions about some of those problematic areas that you're picking up on. And that's it basically. But yeah, portfolio, that is the king. All right, Beth13. How do you think the landscape of games and creative tech changing and developing? Let me start again. How do you think the landscape of games and creative tech changing and developing in terms of women in tech? And what is it that will allow these changes to impact the games industry? Oof. That I am not exactly sure, to be honest, in that first part of that question. I mean, I think in a wider scope, I think it's somehow the games industry just would need to make them more attractive to women. However you do that, and I think it's probably getting more women into senior positions and leadership, and having those sort of people to look up to. I mean, it's a dude fest at the moment, isn't it? It's it's a bit boring, and it's been like that forever, and it shouldn't be like that, And so, trying to find ways to make everything a little more inclusive, a little more less sort of macho, and I think a lot of games are recently, definitely, I've noticed, it's moving away from just blow shit up, smash shit up, that sort of stuff. There's a lot more narrative and emotion, and I think those are all sorts of things that I can imagine appealing to to the opposite sex, but also just to guys as well. I mean, even to me, I find it boring when we're just seeing the same stuff just rolled out year on year. So I think I definitely think we're making steps to sort of create more interest and essentially make more attractive products. And I think we just got to keep pushing, and training as well. I mean, I think the industry has been relatively poor at training, and there are all sorts of factors that come into that to making a good manager. And and it also depends on the company and their various hiring policies. So it's basically a big groundswell. Basically, everything has to sort of level up. I'm not, it's a little slow. It's slower than I would like, but it is improving. So, I mean, I hope that goes some way to answering your question. You can shoot me a mail if not. Okay, let's have a look. Sitco, is it realistic to get into the game industry as a product designer? If yes, what would be the most obvious titles? Environment artist, props artist. So yeah, I mean, definitely. I mean, my training is in a sort of industrial design. It was degree. I like smaller, not small objects, but smaller objects. My personal projects are all quite sort of design focused. And so as a product designer, yeah, I mean, definitely the entryway is almost props, right? Because props are essentially one of the smallest components of the game universe. Once you're building out an environment, that's just a a large collection of props or objects, essentially walls, doors, chairs, whatever it is. But you've got to start somewhere, right? So some people like to stay in the sort of essentially the prop role and continue and progress. Some people enter into props and then want to progress and move on to something bigger. I mean, it depends on what you want to do. I mean, props, it's there's a lot of focus on a singular object. Once you start getting into environments, let's say, then you're dealing with a lot more things in terms of lighting and atmospherics and animation stuff. And you will still have some of that for props, but it's a much bigger picture. There's something nice about props because you can really sort of focus in, and same with weapons. I would count sort of essentially weapons as a prop in terms of it's a singular object. They're normally more complex, but yeah, totally. I mean, it's totally doable. It's just down to, again, your skill set. What strides have you already made to sort of moving into real time and sort of learning the pipeline, because it is, people will know this already who have done their degrees in game art and stuff. It's kind of almost like half art, maybe even a third art, 2/3 technical, because of all the hoops you've got to jump through, building your asset, fixing UVs, getting your shader right, getting into engine, when things go wrong, understanding how to fix those problems. And so, yeah, I mean, if you've already got a background in 3D, great. You're part way there. Then it's just really sort of basically bumming your seat, just logging the hours, whether it's, buying courses or just going through YouTube channels, and, set yourself a mini schedule, and just work out how you're going to do it so you're not overwhelmed, and just make sure that your expectations are set correctly so that you're not like, oh yeah, I'm going to smash this, it's going to be the best prop in the world. It's not going to happen. It's going to be messy. It might come out okay, but you're going to make a lot of mistakes, and you've just got to learn from those mistakes, and go, right, okay, let's do this again, or do something different, because you've got to keep yourself motivated, right? So yeah, totally doable. All right, let's have a look. Would you recommend, if you want to be a concept artist, to specialize, or rather be a jack of all trades, master of none? I mean, that's interesting. I mean, the normal sort of progression. Well, yes. What would you do? I guess the normal progression is to sort of have a crack at everything. But obviously, you might already immediately lean towards something. I mean, concept artists is varied, right? So everybody's different, but for the sake of argument, let's say it's, you've got character concept artists, environment concept artists, props, vehicles and spaceships and weapons, let's say. And so, if you're doing an environment, often that does encompass a lot of, it's kind of like a game of intersecting circles. But it's probably better to concentrate on one thing, to be honest, initially. Understand that, it's, it's understanding the fundamentals of what you're trying to achieve, and then also dissecting other people's work so that you can sort of figure out what makes theirs good over that other person's. How do I achieve it? Obviously, it's not that simple, but really sort of dialing into that, and then getting your work to a good level and getting your confidence to a good level, right? That's what it. That's. I mean, probably everybody on here knows confidence dealing with the internal gremlins is the big one, right? It's just like they're there just going, oh, you can't do this, oh. And so it's building yourself up to that into that happy place, really, and just going, okay, yeah, I've messed that up, that's okay, I'm going to carry on. And also having your, you need a support group. It's much harder to just to do it in a vacuum and on your own. You need a group of trusted people who are going to support you. And also, I paused there because I was just thinking, you want them to be able to give a critique, not be critical and be like, oh, that shit, that is. You want to be able to discuss it. You want to be able to feel that you're at ease to discuss with that person, and if you make a mistake, not feel ashamed or you're going to fall on your sword. You want to feel comfortable to be able to make mistakes. That's the best part. That's the best methodology, right? Is be able to get yourself into that position where you're like, yeah, I cocked it up. I didn't see that coming. I still have it. I work with John Crew and Ben Curtis heavily on the weapons and a couple of the designers, and we still miss stuff. And years ago, I used to want to come home and sort of kill myself. And I'm not. I mean, that's a bit of an exaggeration, but I didn't feel good about it. And I've just got to the point now where I'm just like, that's okay, because I know we can fix it. If we don't fix it now, we can fix it later. I'm gonna like hold up my hand and go, yeah, I forgot this, guys. Sorry. Can you sort it out when you get to it? And it's just having that trusted group, and that makes such a huge difference when you're not having to deal with people who are like trying to throw you under the bus or any of that sort of stuff. So yeah, in summary, I would say focus, build up your confidence, then start to branch out, kind of like a tree, I guess. Get your foundation ready, stable, solid. All right. Okay, let's have a look. 3D is always one of those skills listed as extra in job adverts. Do you think that's true, or do you think it's a must-have at this point? I'm a digital painter with some 3D knowledge. Should I be leaning more heavily into 3D if I want to be a concept artist? That's very much dependent on the company and the project. For Star Citizen, we are heavily a 3D project in terms of concept art. That's what Chris has always liked. He's always preferred that. And because of the complexity, especially, I mean, the environments are complex, but talking about ships and stuff, they're also super complex, and often the teams are relatively green. No offense, there's a lot of juniors or mid, so there's a lot of complex things to take into account. So basically, we try and work out as much as we can. Basically do the front loading and then hand it off to the team, and then like, okay, right, I understand it. So then they're spending less time about having to think about fundamental design decisions, and so they could spend their time actually making the artwork and translating it into engine, making it look correct. So I mean, but there are projects where it's very, it's very it's very artistic, the styling, and some people, in the past there have been projects where people have wanted hand paint, a lot of hand painted textures, or it might be that the game, it depends on the genre, right? So it's really, you've got to sort of figure out what game do you want to work on, because obviously you're going to be spending 8-10 hours a day working on that, so you need to be happy doing that in the first place, and then see if there are what those games are, and then if there's a space for you. But I would say that now, I mean, yeah, I think it. I mean, at least the projects I work on, it's impossible not to have some 3D. And there are some people I've worked with who are very good, and their 3D has been very limited, and they've been able to get some quite sort of basic shapes built in 3D, and then they'll just 2D bash it basically, and achieve what they need, and sort of communicate, because it's all about communicating the idea and the solution. So it is possible. You've just got to find the project that would be happier for that. But it's a tool, right? So I definitely say in this day and age, having both of those in your toolbox is always going to be put you in a stronger position, right? Okay, let's have a look. If a studio I applied to half a year ago has a new opening, should I apply again even if my portfolio doesn't have anything new in it? I mean, if you apply, let's say you're applying for a junior artist role, if that's the same role that you're applying to, it's the same project, your portfolio doesn't have anything new in it. My gut feeling is no, don't apply, because what new? You weren't hired in the first place for a reason. What was that reason? Unless unless you got some feedback from that studio, which often you don't. I'd just say, I mean, I don't want to be too mean here. So if you do apply, just go from A to Z, from top to bottom, go through your portfolio. If there's anything poor in it, cut it. If there's anything that can be improved or relit, do that. If it's going to be make a big improvement, go through your covering letter, go through your resume, go through your LinkedIn, your ArtStation, make sure everything is completely polished. Send it to your friend, get them to go through it, double check everything, and then reapply. I mean, if you don't hear anything a second time, then okay, somebody is pipping you to the post every time. So there's something that's not right, something that you need to improve. And generally, you can kind of reverse engineer it in a way. You can basically, you can go on, let's say, ArtStation, do a search for junior artists at the same company that you're looking for, to apply to. Look at their portfolio, because generally you'll be able to see their work before they started at the studio. Have a look at it. What is it? Look at theirs, look at yours, and be critical. Be like, okay, their lighting kicks ass. I mean, lighting often makes or breaks. You can have a kick-ass object, textured, materialed, everything. And if your lighting sucks, don't even bother showing your work. I mean, lighting really can make or break a piece of work. And so, yeah, just really do that sort of comparison. Like, what have they got? And I'm not saying copy their work. Obviously, you still want to have, it's your remain true to yourself, and you want to be building what you like to build, but you might tailor it towards that company. And so it could be that your portfolio work is not in line with that company. That's a problem, right? So that the art director, the lead artist, is going to go, not even close. Like, they've got 50 other applications, off yours goes. So if you really want to get their attention, you need to have something that's at least within that same realm of genre or work. So again, if it's sci-fi, something sci-fi. If it's fantasy, something fantasy. You really sort of, it's a portfolio, right? You're sort of crafting, you're presenting your shop front. You're like, come buy this, come hire me. So let's, take, hire me. And so you've got to have the wares, and the wares is your portfolio. I hope that wasn't too harsh. Anyway, before I forget, halfway through, just a reminder to everybody, we will be doing a giveaway at the end of the session. So towards the end, basically, type in your giveaway, which I've written at the bottom here, and I have a little system here that will randomly pick someone out. We'll send you direct from Amazon, because it's a print-on-demand system. We'll send you a paperback. And have I got a little copy of it? This is the. Oh, I bet the colours are knackered, aren't they? Oh no, it's working now. And then inside is what I call a book plate. And so I'll sign that and put a little message in there. And we'll send that separately because it's cheaper, let's face it. And then you just put it into your book and off you go. If you miss out, there will be other giveaways, or you can always go onto Amazon and pick up a hardback, which is my favourite. It's the nicest one. It is the most expensive, but it is the coolest one. And then not Facebook, paperback, or you can pick up a digital version on any of these applications listed at the bottom. Anyway, that's enough book selling for the minute. Let's get back to something important. Let's do some more questions. All right. I'm hoping. Sorry if I'm missing anybody. I'm just doing my best to get through them as they come up. All right. Do you have any recommendations for young artists with no professional experiences regarding the interview with a big studio? So we'll go. So we're assuming that they've gone right. We love your work. Let's have an interview. I guess nowadays it's pretty much the first call will be like this over the internet, and you want to do your homework, right? So an interview is a two-way thing, and I do cover this in my book. This is one of the things I do cover, or one of the many things I cover. And so it's a two-way street. So you don't forget that you're interviewing them to a certain degree. You've got things that you want to find out about, whatever it is. How the project's structured, how many people are on the team, what's their pipeline like, or what's the relation, how I don't know, whatever it is. There's a million questions you might want to know, or down to how many days off do you get. So that's more specific, really, more towards the end. But they're going to be grilling you about, they will look at your portfolio, and so the chances are they'll probably it's not, for me anyway. I can't speak for anybody else. It's a two-part process. So it's looking at your portfolio, so normally pick out some pieces of work and just ask you to explain them, ask you to explain your process, decisions you've made. You might get asked about some of the the problems you've had. That can be a trick one. If they're asking you that, then you want to sort of also follow up with how you fix those problems. You might want to say what you were happy with, and also in retrospect, what you would, if you did it again, what you would fix. And so, that sort of shows, that shows an agility, basically. For an artist in the games industry, you need that agility and that flexibility. You need to be able to bend with the wind, as I say. When someone's like leaning on you and they're just like, fix it. You're like, okay, and not break. Just like, okay, yeah, I get it. Yep. And not be super precious about your work. You always have to be prepared to just make changes, make alterations, and that's kind of why we have the pipeline, a game pipeline, anyway. And so they're going to be quizzing you. It's also a little bit of a personality test. They'll sort of be quizzing you about, maybe what you do. Just some extracurricular things, just to get an idea of more about your personality, and really they're just sort of looking for red flags. So if you're presentable, you're enthusiastic, you're flexible, you've got good work, you ask good questions, and you listen. Listening is a big key skill. Then you're in a good position. And then it's just going to be, there might be two. Let's say there's two candidates one might win out just because they've got a better portfolio, or it's just something more that they're looking for. So it's, yeah, do your preparation. So, do you feel ready? Double check everything. Make sure, check your background. What are you wearing? How do you look on camera? Does your audio work? Have you got a drink? I don't know. Like, if you're like me, I'm a bit of an anxious type, so I like to sort of do my prep as much as possible. And then I'm like, okay, right, I've prepped the hell out of this. I've done the best I can. If it goes wrong, then it goes wrong, and that's it. So yes, that's it. Prep, prep, prep. Okie dokie. Well, I'm starting to want to avoid Beth's questions. They're like essays, and they're really tricky. Let's have a look. There's an expansion of game skills and knowledge within broadcast media and virtual production. This crossover is going to produce some interesting roles within film and media production. What opportunities do you think will develop across the next 5 years? I think I know who this is. There is a lot of interesting stuff going on. I've a couple of buddies of mine. One of them's a concept artist who's been with us for a long time. He's just made his own movie. He's worked on a couple of movies. One was Moon, and the other one was called Archive, which was all his own movie. And his name's Gavin Rothery, and so he does a lot of concept art for us, but he's also a filmmaker. He's also looking at real time stuff. I've got a buddy at Frame Store, Visual Effects House. And these are just a couple of people, but there are a lot of people now who are starting to look at real-time engines, right? Especially, let's say, Unreal Engine. I've got a soft spot for Unreal Engine, obviously having worked at Epic, and it does a lot of awesome stuff. And I think it's now almost at the point of, well, it's almost like, what do you want to do? It's not like, can you do it? It's, what do you want to do? And so I think there's going to be, I think the barrier to entry is sort of coming down. So it's less about needing massive budgets initially. It's a lot easier to prototype ideas, get a mocap suit, or you can even do mocap just through your webcam. So there's a lot of interesting opportunities for creativity, right? And I think that's a big thing that we need to keep on pushing, because there's a lot of people that are just pushing the same rubbish on us, and I think that the more creativity we can have, the better, and the easier it is, and the less barriers to entry. So whatever that is, you can, with a relatively basic PC, and theoretically 2 pieces of free software, Blender and Unreal Engine, do some really amazing stuff. We've seen the Olympics on BBC. All their studios are virtual sets, right? So yeah, like I said, I think it's almost, what do you want to do, and then have a go at it, and then I think if people do good prototypes, you always need a good prototype, especially for media, media, film, TV sort of stuff. It's definitely going to help to sort of sell your vision. I mean, even for games, right? You need that demo. People can't see what's in your head. So yeah, I think it'll be interesting. I think the more we can sort of pull away from just big silver screen stuff, the better. So whether it's, I mean, we're seeing it now on Netflix and stuff, and Amazon and all the streaming services, but is there going to be more YouTube stuff? And I've seen people do a lot of amazing stuff in Unity as well, where they're blending stuff that they've captured on video and used it as dynamic textures, and blending all sorts of things with basic green screen, and making really cool sci-fi environments. I mean, it's intensive. Well, I think it's a one-man band, but yeah, super cool. So hopefully we'll see more of that, and more people pushing the boat out. Okie dokie. What are your upcoming future projects? Well, I can't tell you about any of my future projects other than I'm one star citizen, and that's it. I know that I'm working on more spaceships, vehicles, weapons. Me personally, if you're asking about personal projects, that is a very good question. I mean, I've just obviously finished the book at the end of last year. And in terms of lockdown, I had a really sort of, what's the word, creative 2 years. Did a lot of work. And now at the point where I've kind of taken a break. I've kind of had to switch brains over to advertising and marketing, which is not my brain space, and has been really like learning. It's like almost like akin to learning 3D. I'm just like, what? I don't get this. UVs, what? And so I've kind of had a bit of a creative break, and then I'm hoping to get back onto either or both writing a book, like what would be a fiction book, or prototyping a gay sort of a sci-fi universe, and sort of relearning Unreal, and or teaching myself basically to paint in 2D, basically in digitally, because all my work is in 3D. I do everything in Photoshop. Max, Keyshot, and Photoshop, and I still use a mouse. I mean, I do have essentially a Wacom and a pen. I just haven't really used it. I don't need to. I've got all the skills I need to achieve what I need to. So, but I do want to push myself out of my comfort zone. So, that is just a time thing. So that is kind of what I think that is my plan at the moment for personal projects. Okay. Yes, my first up and coming project is NDA. The second one is called NDA. Yes, I can't talk about any of the Star Citizen stuff, I'm afraid. But I mean, we are very open in terms of projects, so you get to know a lot more about the Star Citizen project than most games companies. And you also get to see all our horrors and mistakes and all that sort of stuff. So it's kind of nice. You get used to it. It sort of shows the reality and not just the glamour side of I'm making games. It's so cool. There's a lot of other stuff that goes on behind the scenes. Okay. How to stay focused, engaged, and creative in the professional environment under work depression. Also to keep away anxiety and overcome the burning out. Oh, that's a good question. I mean, that's going to be specific to everybody and how they handle it individually. But it's balance, right? I mean, in an ideal world, you'll work for a company that takes work-life balance seriously. And thankfully, there are more and more companies that are doing that. Crunch, unfortunately, still is a thing for many companies. And I'm not going to lie, I'm not a fan. It's not pleasant. It's hard, especially if you're doing like an 84-hour week for months on end. That's rough, right? And that definitely broke me. And I think lessons I learned are I was a little obsessive. That was my fault in terms of I have to accept that. I just went all in, just focused on work, and really I needed to pull my head out and just go, okay, I need to work on my physical fitness. I need to work on my mental fitness. So there's a lot more of that that's going on these days. So use apps like I use Headspace, but we also have we can use Calm as well, which is another app for sort of mindfulness and meditation, which also sort of helps keep the sort of nagging doubts that I'm sure everybody will have had this where the gremlins are going full speed in their brain and you just feel like a piece of dirt. And it doesn't matter how many things you've achieved in the past. It doesn't matter And it's so mindfulness, I find for me definitely sort of helps control that and just bring down the noise and let me focus. I also do a lot of, I also make sure I sort of, set achievable goals. But yeah, it is keeping that balance, and having a trusted group, like I mentioned, having people that you can go to, and you don't want to be at the water cooler just bitching about your project, right? I mean, everybody wants to have a moan. And some people do make that mistake and they think that they're not being noticed, but they are being clocked and they're being noticed by their managers, and it makes its way up the chain. So, better to just do it in, private, with a group if you want to bitch about your project. But ideally, rather than bitch, identify the solution, identify the problem and then try and find a solution, right? It's dead easy just to sit about going moaning, oh, this is rubbish, this is bad, this is why don't they do this? It takes a lot more effort to sort of see it from the other side of the fence, maybe where someone else is coming from, where the company's coming from, or maybe what you can do to change how you approach something, right? So sometimes, at least in my past, I've been the obstacle, right? Or the obstacle, as in, you can only change one person, and that's yourself. You can't actually change anybody else as much as you would like. So you can only work on yourself. So if you're constantly hitting a wall, you've got to find out, well, why am I hitting that wall? What is that wall? What size is this wall? Can I get over the wall? What tools do I need to get over the wall? And you just need to ask yourself these questions. I do it quite a bit in the past, less so at the moment because I would say things are on a very even keel. But yeah, I would drill down and just be like, I would write out the question to myself. Okay, Paul, what's the problem? And then underneath I would type, oh, the problem is this, type it out. And then it would be, the next question would be, okay, how do you solve it? And I'd be, okay, I solve it by speaking to this person. I need this information. I'm missing this file. This piece of software isn't working, keeps crashing. And then you're like, okay, well, how do you fix the crashing software? Speak to IT. And it often happens when you're overwhelmed as well, for me anyway, that start to lose that sort of clarity. So by really, you feel a bit daft at initially, but once you see the results and you start going through them and identifying and then checking them off, you're like, oh, this is awesome. Why didn't I do this before? So it's that. And so, once you've got your group of friends who you can sort of bounce problems off and be like, oh, I'm stuck on this. And I even, I do it with my juniors. You can always learn from, it doesn't matter who's in your team. You've just got to, and the temptation is when you're an art director, the expectation is that you know everything. And that's what people think. But you don't. And you'd be foolish to assume that you do. And you're in a much better position if you know that you don't know everything and that you can just ask your junior, like, hey, what do you think of this? Like, and because you might miss something, and just because they're a junior doesn't mean they're not going to pick up on it. They might not pick up on super nuanced stuff, but they might be like, well, I don't know, it's not quite right. I can't put my finger on it, but then it just, then you plant the seed and you're like, okay, all right, I need to fix this. And so I'm not going to lie, it's not easy. It's you just got to work on it. It's like everything. It's like your 3D. Everyone loves just to sit in the chair and do their 3D or the 2D or, make the scenes, make the pretty images. That gives us the good feels, right? But what they forget is they need to put in their time and energy also into developing their personal skills, their sort of internal skills, and their soft skills. But that's a separate issue. But yeah, you gotta see it holistically, and really sort of remember to look at all three parts really. Okay, what else have we got here? What about, let's have a look. What about 3D modeling programs? Is it a big problem if you are not familiar with the one that is listed in the job description? For example, 3D Studio Max. I mean, only this. I mean only the special program and not the experience of 3D programs in general. Is Blender a serious program for the game industry today? So I think, okay, so before I forget, this will probably be probably my second to last question, and then we'll do the giveaway because we're running out of time fast, which is on the one hand good because you've had good questions. Maybe we'll do this again. So generally, Blender, I mean, it depends on the studio. Some studios are adopting it. We use a mix, and and so in terms of concept artists, it doesn't matter. It's whatever tool you use, and then as long as you can export it as an OBJ, FBX, or a collada, then we can transfer between files, and it's generally not an issue. Some of the, even the game pipeline switches about a bit, so sometimes assets will be built in Max, and then it will go to Maya for rigging, and then maybe back to Max, and then into Engine. I mean, each pipeline can be very specific. Normally there'll be time when, so let's say you're a master of 3ds Max, and they want you to work in Maya. There'll be a period of adjustment, right? And that should be, if they know what they're doing, that'll be factored into your probation period, right? So you'll be given a certain amount of time to sort of transition over. You won't have that same amount of workload kind of thing because you're learning, right? Even if you're senior, there's still got to be a bedding in period. And so, I think you just got to have that flexibility. It's a little bit, in the past I found it's a bit like wearing boxing gloves for 2 weeks. None of the keystrokes do what you want them to do because you're working off your old package, and you've got to build up that new muscle memory. And so you've got to go through that pain process. Unfortunately, there's no avoiding it. You've just got to be like, okay, I'm going to go through 2 weeks pain, but I know at the end of it, I'll make it. And if there's any problems, I won't sit on them. I'm going to ask somebody, left or right of me, whoever will in front of me, how do you do this? Like, I don't, what am I meant to do? Don't just sit there and stew. That's the worst thing. So, yeah, for me, it's never been a problem. And when I've been hiring for the game teams, I've never seen it. I've never taken it as an issue. It's ideal if you work in the same program as the company, but it's, in my experience, it's never been a blocker. All right, so let's go to last question. Okay. Ooh, some really tricky ones there. I'm going to avoid you because they're too big. I'm going to go with a nice, easy one here. Are cover letters necessary? If they are, how should you want to sound in a cover letter as a junior artist? I feel like I should be humble, but should also know that I need to sell myself. Yeah, so you need to be essentially what is assertive. So you need to be, it's confidence, right? You don't want to be, you probably want to look up examples of sort of assertive cover letters. You're basically extolling your virtues. You're saying, I've got experience in this, I've built that, I've done my degree in this. I love, whatever it is, experience with whatever package, love sci-fi. I mean, that's all you've got to go on, isn't it? Do you know what I mean? You give a little bit. I mean, covering letters are really just sort of the icing on the cake, I find. I mean, me personally, if I'm looking at an application, it's always portfolio first, then it's the resume, then it's the cover letter. Like, cover letter has a little bit of just a little bit of a flourish in there. It might be like, I've always been a fan of whatever, let's say Star Citizen, and sci-fi movies. I've always wanted to get into the into this industry so that I can help build my skills and work on my favorite kind of projects. I mean, you can't really say much more than that, can you? I mean, but that's fine, because as a recruiter, you're just like, well, you're a junior, so yeah, let's just see your portfolio and let's go from there. So I wouldn't sweat it too much, but you don't want to be that person that's avoid stuff like my stuff is awesome. I expect your call, I expect to hear your call, blah blah blah. I've had some real horrors where they've been totally like, overconfident and selling themselves, like false security. It doesn't go down well. It just smacks of ego, and ego is never a good thing in a game team. There are some people in the industry with big egos, admittedly, but if you can leave the ego at the door and come do your job and then pick your ego back up when you leave the job, then great. It makes everybody's life a bit easier. And so, yes, I would say that. So, just be honest, be upfront, be confident, like you say. But yeah, your main calling card is your portfolio, then resume. Okay. All right. Thank you, everybody, for your questions. Sorry for anybody's questions I missed. There's a lot to talk about when you work in games, and I forget. I get used to it. I've been doing this stuff for so long. I take a lot of stuff for granted. So I hope you guys have enjoyed it and have found something useful. Hope I haven't bored you to tears. If I have, then you know not to come again. If you have enjoyed this, then hopefully you will visit. I am hoping to. Basically, I'm going to be doing some interviews of sort of what I would class as industry legends. I was meant to do one a couple of weeks ago, but I was taken down by a horrible cold. It was not the dreaded COVID, but it did take me down badly, and so I had to cancel the interview. So that one's going to be a real killer interview, because that is with James Hawkins. He's a senior concept artist at Epic Games. I did share an office with him, so I am slightly biased. However, he was instrumental in developing the look of Gears 1, 2, and 3, Unreal Championship 2, Gears 3, and so many other projects. I mean, the man's a giant, and he's probably got the lowest internet presence ever. Super nice guy too, so I'm really looking forward to that. And so that's going to be on... Eventually, well, I have set up a YouTube channel. It's called the same thing, Game Artist Show. So you'll be able to find me there, and I'll eventually be uploading there for people to watch. So that should be pretty cool. They won't be live; they'll be recorded. Anyway, enough babble. You guys want to know who's won, right? So let's run the numbers. Let's roll it. Okay, Nightbot, do your thing. That is too funny. Dakota Vosselman, you have won today's giveaway. Congratulations. So I will contact you through Nightbot, which is also linked through Twitch. I'll get your details, and then we'll whiz a copy over to you and send you a little note. So thank you, everybody, for coming. Thank you to those who had some really tricky questions. I'm going to have to up my game, obviously. I'm going to have to do a little more reading and not just sit on my laurels. Hope to see you guys again. So thank you very much, and have a good weekend. And this is the Game Artist Show, over and out. Bye.
There were few orders of heroes.